What's up everyone and welcome back. Registered Dietitian Kara Corey here, and I'm going to do a little bit of a chatty video for you guys today. For those of you that are new here, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you'd like to stick around for all my upcoming videos. For those of you that have been here before, welcome back. And I discussed in my last vlog, if you guys haven't seen that vlog, head back, check that out right now. I started talking a little bit about my cut I did this past year, and that I was going to do a separate video discussing what's been successful for me with maintaining the weight that I lost during that cut. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I think this is one of the biggest questions I get, is how to maintain weight once you've lost it. Most oftentimes when we cut or attempt to lose weight, we are restricting our calories, right? Ultimately, there's got to be some kind of caloric restriction there, and or there's a level of change to your activity. There's an increase in cardio, or some type of changes have been made to your workout program. So oftentimes people want to know, once I get to where I want to be, do I have to maintain that level? Do I have to maintain that level of calories? Do I have to maintain that level of exercise forever to maintain? So I wanted to share with you guys my personal experience, because I did do a cut this past year. Basically, I would say all in all, I lost about 10-ish pounds, depending on where I kind of take my starting point from. But I did a very slow, controlled cut, utilizing just flexible dieting principles. I utilized tracking my macros in my FitnessPal. I find that to be a very helpful tool for me. And I'm sharing with you guys how I went about my cut, because I think that shares with you how I've been able to maintain. So what you're doing when you're attempting to lose weight will dictate how successful you are with sustaining the changes that you've made. So it is really important from the get-go that you're not applying extremes in your life, because those extremes likely will not be able to be maintained to the degree that you want them to be maintained. So for me, it was really important that I did things at a slow, normal pace that felt good to me, that felt sustainable, that never felt like it wasn't something that I couldn't maintain long term, because that for me was the goal. I'm not in a bodybuilding prep. I'm not unhealthy. I just wanted to make some changes and feel healthier in my own skin. So tracking macros was really helpful for me. It helped me kind of identify, how much I can eat. I really tried to my calories got bumped up higher than they had ever been, and it showed me I wasn't going to gain weight at a higher calorie limit. I made sure I was working out consistently and kind of giving it my all, refocusing during my workouts, and just putting as much effort into that I could to really see changes. So it was probably about a 6 to 7 month period that I did this kind of slow cut, where I found out where I wanted to maintain at. And for me, that was finding a spot where I felt good. I wasn't feeling overly hungry or not hungry, but I knew if I kept cutting calories, I was going to start to feel hungry, start to feel restricted, and I didn't want to do that, because that for me would be where I'd not be able to maintain. So tracking macros really helped me identify kind of my general ranges, I felt like, for protein, carbs, and fat that worked well for me. And with transitioning into a maintenance phase, I basically kind of kept the same macros, if you will, with transitioning to maintenance. And what I did was I just kind of started being a bit more lenient with myself, honestly. I tracked macros for a period of time going into maintenance, but I wasn't as consistent with it. So I had a lot of traveling during that time where I just wouldn't track at all, and just started being more in tune with my body and kind of applying the same things that I was learning during my cutting phase into my maintenance phase. So if I was gone for a week, I wanted to not track, I just kind of ate the same healthy foods for the most part. I found myself getting into a pattern of what worked well for me in terms of the amount of foods I ate. And I know it can be hard to venture out of tracking macros and being kind of driven by the numbers, but you should begin to learn, if you are someone that's tracking macros, about portion sizes, about food choices, about what foods are making you feel your best. So that was something that I think helped me transition out of macro tracking and more into intuitive eating. And just to clarify, I do some intuitive eating and I do track macros some days. I'm just not consistent with it at all during this phase of my life because I feel like I don't have to be, quite honestly, and I've been able to maintain just fine. So it's been nice for me to kind of transfer out of that phase and just be a little bit more relaxed about it and not feel like I'm losing any progress. And it can be hard to give up that control, but it can also work very well if you've taken the time to learn more about your body. So for anyone that is wanting to maintain their weight once you've lost it, what I suggest for you is not just stop tracking macros altogether if that's what you were doing. Like I said, for myself, I didn't stop altogether. I just kind of slowly transitioned out of it. Some days I would, some days I wouldn't. I wanted to get away a little bit from tracking macros because after a period of time, for many of us, it can feel like a chore and you can get tired of it. I've heard even sometimes clients of mine, you feel like you resent it after a while if it just feels too cumbersome. You want to be able to not do that for many of us. So in order to transition out of tracking macros, but to not feel like you're going to just gain all your weight back, for me, what was helpful was to kind of wean myself out of it a bit. So I didn't just totally stop tracking macros and boycott it and boycott even thinking about how I was fueling my body throughout the day. I kind of slowly did it. And what worked well for me was during this time, I was taking trips, I had my birthday, I had different events going on. So I kind of took those days and times as opportunities to not track. I would track some days out of the week, and then if I was gone, I was going to not track, and I was just going to do the best I could, listen to my body, and see where it got me. And at this time, I was still weighing myself with some frequency, whether it was daily or weekly. I was still kind of giving myself some accountability there to see how I was doing. And really, I did a good job with it. I was actually surprised because I remember taking a couple days off from macro tracking on a trip with my sister, and I came back and my weight hadn't changed. And then, I just kept doing that more and more and noticing that the scale weight wasn't changing. And yes, I know that's not the only identifier out there, but it was a good way for me to gauge if what I was doing was working or if I was way off. And then I just continued with that. And for me, it was really important to not lose sight of just being mindful of what I was eating and why during this whole process. Not just mindlessly eating, not just giving up for the day if I decided to eat something a little less healthy. If I decided to have a couple cookies, I gave up that kind of extreme mentality where I screwed up my day and might as well just finish her out and keep eating crap, which was an extreme kind of mentality that was, I feel like I ingrained inside myself. I take full responsibility for it, but it did happen partially with competing. But I think I even did it sometimes prior to competing. That's an aside. But just kind of getting rid of that extreme mentality really will make things easier for you to maintain. I just kind of fell into patterns of what made me feel good and satisfied in terms of food, in terms of volume. And it just became easier and easier as time went on. But I think taking a slower approach for me has made it so much easier to maintain. And with all that too, with my workouts, I've stayed pretty consistent with that, you guys. Like keeping that consistent made it easier for me with coming off of tracking macros, just because I have like a good consistent plan in place that's not hard for me to follow either. So that's key there with maintaining something. Finding something you enjoy doing. So for me, 5 days a week is good in the gym. That's like a realistic amount. Some days it's 4, some days it's 5, but that's kind of like my habit that's in place. So even when I'm not motivated, I'm still gonna make sure I get in those 5 days a week because it's a learned behavior, it's a learned habit, it's part of my lifestyle. So for me, finding that sweet spot in terms of my workouts made it easy when you go to a maintenance phase, because really going from cutting to maintenance, you don't want too many things to change. You can't totally boycott going to the gym. You can't totally boycott doing any kind of workouts, you can't totally boycott following a healthy diet, right? So you have to kind of finding that balance going into a maintenance phase. And for me, that was keeping my lifts consistent. That stayed stable. My cardio, however, not that I was doing a ton of cardio during my cut, but I have backed off that a little bit. I actually don't really aim to hit certain cardio sessions or minutes a week like I did during my cut. But I'm just kind of mindful of it. Like, I do enjoy doing cardio. I do shorter sessions, and I just more listen to my body with that too. You know, when I'm in the mood for it, if I wake up in the morning and I feel like I'm more in the mood to do cardio to kind of wake me up before I lift, I might do that. I might just focus on like my daily activity more so and be more focused on that with how many steps I'm walking. So I haven't been as strict with my cardio, and again, I've been able to maintain okay, but that's one of those areas you have of flexibility, you know, in that maintenance stage is how much cardio you're doing versus how many calories you're eating. And I guess I've just kind of found that sweet spot for me in terms of both. I wouldn't say it's necessarily been easy, but I did put in a lot of work to just kind of figure out what the best like foods for me would be, what the best like patterns for me would be in terms of like eating and meal timing. And I'm not even consistent with it, but I'm just more mindful, I guess, is like my number one thing with being able to maintain is just being more mindful and accountable with myself for eating and like thinking about it when I'm eating, like, have I gotten in any vitamins and minerals today? Have I ate any vegetables today? How am I doing on my water intake? And just kind of doing more little check-ins with myself versus just kind of being mindless about it and just eating because someone brings in food or because food's around and not taking any accountability for it. So I think that's one of the things that can really help you in a maintenance phase where you want to loosen the reins a bit but still maintain your progress. Now, the other thing for me that I've mentioned on here before that I think did help with my cut and maintaining is just overall hormone levels, which I haven't had tested. So, I mean, I don't even know, to be honest with you, but I did go off birth control the beginning of this year. And I think it did take a while before like my body like knew what to do and how to balance things out, because it was a slow road for me to lose any weight. But I feel like that's made a difference being off birth control. I feel like I look less bloated is like my best way to describe it. And I just bring that up because I know I've had a lot of people reach out to me where they're scared to go off birth control because they don't want to gain weight. So I can only speak to my personal experience with it. I was on a very low dose, like generic orthotricycline birth control. And I do think that made a big difference because my body's just been responding differently. And I didn't know if there was a correlation first or not, but I think it took like 4 or 5 months coming off of the birth control after being on it for 20 years before I started regulating. And I think my body is probably still figuring it out, especially during my menstrual cycle. But I'm going to be honest that I do think that that has made a difference in my results and being able to maintain as well at kind of like a healthy, happy spot for me. So I just wanted to share with you guys some of my personal experiences from transitioning from cutting into maintenance and being able to maintain here. I think the biggest thing for me to stress to you guys is just having something in place that's sustainable and getting away from that extremist type emphasis on diet and workouts. It's really finding that sweet spot, that middle ground where you can do it, you're still in a happy place with your body, with your health, and you feel good, but it's not like taking over your entire life and your entire headspace. So this is what's worked for me. Each and every person is going to be different, but make sure you guys are thinking about that when you're, writing out your weight loss goals and working on your weight loss goals or switching over to maintenance, really thinking about what's realistic for you, what's important for you, and where you can kind of balance things out. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys. Please give the video a thumbs up if you did think it was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next video.